Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first on is titled, Neighbor kept reporting me to the HOA for petty things, opportunity knocked to pay her back and I took it. I found out today that my revenge was complete, so I came here to share it. My neighbor, who we shall call Christy, would report us to our HOA for literally everything she didn't like. Trash can still on the street at 5 p.m. on trash day, reported. Kids bike outside while kids are still playing, reported. Didn't mow this weekend, typically I do this Monday nights, reported Monday morning. Dog barking at 2 in the afternoon as she and her dog walk on the path behind our house, reported. In many cases these were not issues covered by the HOA, but due to repeated reporting the board did fine us and I had to go spend the evening waiting through a 2-hour meeting to have them removed. This kept happening and was driving me nuts. Both my wife and I spoke to her and tried to find out why she felt this was okay, and she told us, "You just need to do a better job being a good neighbor." Fast forward to early this summer. She posts on a neighborhood website sharing a video about the anti-vax movement. In general the replies are pretty aggressive about telling her she is full of it, but she keeps pushing back, leading to a super long post about how we all are wrong and we should listen because she is a doctor. She signs at Dr. Christie, last name, naturopathic physician. At this point I am mostly just wondering what the heck any kind of doctor would be against vaccines. This made no sense to me, so I started digging. I did find that Christie was listed as a doctor on sites where you could find physicians. I dug more into what exactly a naturopathic physician was and found that in my state of Colorado they are regulated and required to maintain a license to practice. I checked into it and found out the following: 1. Christie was not in the state database as a naturopathic physician. 2. The board that regulates it has an online reporting tool. At this point I took all the information I had, grabbed screenshots and checked my timeline and reported her as claiming to be a naturopathic physician when she was not. I then followed that up with this post on the neighborhood website. This is a hot button topic for me, and because of that and Christie signing her post as Dr. last name, I had to dig some. I for one am a huge fan of including whole person treatment. I think doctors of osteopathic medicine are wonderful as they work to integrate whole health into the picture with well-researched medical best practices. Naturopathy less so, which is the problem here. One researched article breaks down a lot of the issues quite well. It is almost 13 years old, but still quite good at explaining the valid concerns. I further checked as Colorado does regulate naturopathy and I could not find any Christie last name listed there. My thought was that it is entirely possible that she holds a license to practice in Colorado and my search wasn't working, but even just searching her first name or zip code or my town or town near us provides no results for a Christie last name. There are 2 naturopathic doctors in town near us. At this point Christie locked the post and later deleted the entire thing. I was pretty dang happy that she removed the post, but today it got better. In the mail I received a copy of the cease and desist letter that Christie received from the state about a month ago. It told her that she must cease and desist her practice immediately. The next one is titled, The Case of the Missing Firewood. This happened when my grandfather was growing up in rural Kansas in the 40s and 50s, and is one of my favorite stories from him. Story: when my grandpa was growing up he didn't have electricity, this being rural Kansas. What they did have was a wood-burning stove. At one point firewood that great-grandfather had been storing began to disappear. A thief was afoot. My great-grandfather, getting tired of the firewood disappearing, hatches a plan. Great-grandfather takes some of the logs and drills them out, leaving a cavity. He then puts some gunpowder in the cavities and plugs the holes to hide his handiwork. That night he tells my grandpa that he would bring in the firewood. Of course he knows what logs he's messed with. Now this is the funny part, and I wish I knew how embellished it was, but stranger things have happened. The next day great-grandfather is walking into town and comes across a gentleman also headed into town, and they get to talking. It turns out the gentleman is going into town to make a purchase, the item he seeks, a new stove. He says to my great-grandfather, "I don't know what they're putting in the coal these days, but it destroyed my stove. No wood ever went missing again." The next one is titled, Try to Screw Over Your Employee. She'll take over your business. My spouse was the second person hired at a consulting company in a very specialized industry. In her 15 years with the firm, it grew to a respectable 3-office, 8 to 10 employees at each location entity. She and the owner grew the business on the contacts, expertise, and presentation of my wife, to the extent that my wife's abilities and education were the main reason the new business came through the door. Over the years, her scope of responsibility grew so that the owner was basically 75% absent and mostly unaware of day-to-day activity. As he got more and more removed from the business, he would make overtures that he would eventually retire and sell her the business. He was so dependent on her income generating that he took out a life insurance policy on her. I did not involve myself too much, but at a major industry dinner party I attended with her, he introduced my wife to the table as "my girl Friday," basically a secretary, which was weird. Over the years, she tried to get an agreement in place to buy the firm, even if it was years away. He always delayed and made promises but never followed through. I told her, "This guy doesn't respect you or your contribution. He will never sell you the business because there is no reason to. He can make more money by stringing you along, and essentially, you are the business. Why would he sell it to you?" One day out of the blue, my wife received a raise and bonus, a very minor amount of money, and a contract that included a non-compete, non-disclosure agreement. After reading it, she realized that the owner was trying to lock her down from leaving for another firm. She had been getting feelers from other companies. To make things even more suspicious, she received a call from a competitor who said they were in the final stages of due diligence and they wanted to meet her. The a-hole was selling the company and didn't think to tell her or ask if she was interested in buying it. She ignored the agreement, and there were no other agreements in place. She was totally free. My wife is extremely loyal. She has missed so many special days working for this guy, stuck around when they were wobbly, even skipped paychecks when there were tough financial times. She was furious, the absolute maddest I've ever seen her. We discussed starting her own firm, and I asked, how much business is contractually obligated to stay there if you leave? It turned out that most agreements were either handshakes or 30-day at will. I also asked, how many would leave with you? She said about 75%, including her biggest source of revenue, who didn't even know the owner. In a very short time, my wife took a 3-week vacation. She had months of unused time. During which time, she rented an office in the same building, and made all the arrangements to set up a new shop. She agreed to leave any and all company property behind and do her best to give the old company no obvious ammo for litigation. She called her clients and said, "I'm leaving. If you want to look into relocating your account with my new company, you'll need to quit the old one before we can discuss it." Most understood the implication. While she was on vacation, she received a panicked call from her boss, "We lost XYZ company. Do you know anything about it?" She said, "I'm sorry, but I just sent you an email, I've resigned. All my keys and company stuff is on my desk. Bye." The new firm took basically 90% of the business and seamlessly transitioned into the same company as it was before, but with a new owner. Even most of the office staff would come aboard. Within a year, her old company closed down except for the small office her old boss ran. She sees him once in a while, and he just scowls at her. The next one is titled, "My Dad's Ultimate Revenge on an Entitled Family." Backstory: my dad is a high school assistant principal. It is currently his first year at a new school, and it is a much better school than the last one he was at, which was overpopulated, drug-filled, and many of the students there had to have free or reduced lunches. There were fights almost every week, and my dad had to suspend kids almost every day. His new school is much better, with just 2 incidents all year, one with an autistic kid who had an episode, and the one I am about to tell you about. Cast: my dad, entitled girl, entitled mother, entitled brother, entitled sister, the bus driver, judge, bus driver, school systems lawyer, the EMS lawyer, my dad's principal, and the school cop. To clarify, any dialogue I might include will obviously not be 100% correct. The original incident took place about 2 months ago. I am not 100% sure what started it, but either the bus driver accidentally bumped into entitled girl while he was dropping her off, or he told off entitled girl for saying something rude, but she got upset and texted entitled mum about it. Entitled Mum came out of her home and started yelling at him, so he just drove off. The next morning, the bus driver went to pick up Entitled Girl, but when he got to her driveway, she wasn't there. Entitled Mum, Entitled Brother, and Entitled Sister were. He opened the door to ask where Entitled Girl was, and that's when all three of them boarded the bus. Entitled Girl is a junior, I think. Her older brother was around 22, and her older sister was in college. These people were all adults. And all three of them started screaming at the poor bus driver, threatening him, calling him slurs, and telling him off. The rest of the kids on the bus were expectedly scared. The moment the three of them got off of the bus driver sped away. The one thing the Entitled family forgot to think about was the fact that there are 4 HD cameras equipped with audio sensors on every bus in our county. They caught everything. The poor dude got the rest of the kids to school and went straight to the front office. My dad was upset. He got the video feed from the bus, called his school cop who called some other cops, and had Entitled Mother's butt arrested for malicious harassment, intimidation, trespassing, and a few other things. My dad's principal let my dad have control over the whole situation because he knows my dad does not duck around with these kinds of things. So my dad helped bus driver get some revenge. First, he had Entitled Girl switched to a different bus route so she couldn't mess with the bus driver anymore. Then he had Entitled Brother, Entitled Sister, and Entitled Mother permanently banned from the school grounds, and then he gave the bus driver a month of paid time off. These were just petty revenge, if that. Working with their lawyer, my dad got statements from most of the kids who were on the bus, and they decided to press charges against only Entitled Mother and Entitled Brother, who had apparently been in the middle of a 6-month probationary period for a different crime, so he was essentially guaranteed jail time. Going into the trial 6 weeks ago, nobody expected M to get any more jail time than a week, if that. My dad, his principal, and the school cop were all in the courthouse in case they needed to be called as witnesses. They were not. Their lawyer made his remarks and Entitled Mum's lawyer just tried to reduce her sentence. He knew they were going to lose. The videos weren't even shown to the judge because there was so much other evidence. But the judge surprised everyone when he gave Entitled Mum a 30-day sentence. He made it very clear to her that she had threatened the life of a man, endangered kids, and trespassed on school property, for no reason besides that the bus driver had told off Entitled Girl, and that she should be punished accordingly. My dad and his principal were trying not to cheer. But that wasn't even the best part. Entitled Brother skipped his trial. They were back-to-back trials, so there is no way he could have forgotten. The judge immediately issued a bench warrant for his arrest. He was caught the next day in Entitled Mother's house, and when brought in front of the judge, he was given a year in prison for breaking his probation, skipping his trial, and for the same charges as his mother. If that isn't pro-revenge, I don't know what is. As for Entitled Girl, she switched schools. My dad has told this story to almost everyone he knows, as he finds the almost instant karma hilarious. The next one is titled, "Don't Screw You Over?" If only you had been a little kinder. I used to work at the post office as an RCA, which is a rural carrier associate. It was a part-time driver job. It paid well, and I wanted to get a full-time job with benefits, so you have to start somewhere. The full-time driver on my route was Bill. Bill was his own man. He did what he wanted, and the postmaster allowed it. When I was trained, I rode one day with Bill. The next day, Bill called out. I then had to sort the mail and drive the route all alone. It was horrible. The PM should have told him to come in, but he was a spineless man. I didn't finish until around 8 p.m. It should have been around 3 p.m. given the time of year and how long it would eventually take me. My schedule was every Saturday, and any vacation days Bill would take. I also covered every time he called out. Now, as this was supposed to be a one-day-a-week job, I had a full-time job as well at my local hospital. My post office job was in the next county over, about 45 minutes away from each way. I would get calls at 6 a.m. from Bill with some shitty excuse for him not wanting to come to work. He would say he had to see an orthodontist today. I worked with these doctors, and I know that there was no way he would be able to get an appointment that early. If he needed an appointment, he should have called me the day before so I could get my second shift job covered. Again, the spineless PM would allow it to happen without any recourse. On my anniversary, I had told him I was going to take my wife out to a nice lunch before we both went to our job at the hospital. At 6 a.m. the phone rang, and it was the same lie as always, and I had to go in. I reminded him it was my anniversary, and he said, "Too bad." I went in, totally upset. The same thing on my birthday, and then on my wife's birthday, he called out, and I had to work both jobs. A few months later, and nothing had changed. I applied to nursing school and was accepted for the fall program. I had several months, so I kept it to myself. My plan was to work the same way I had, and if I was offered a full-time post office job, I'd take it. If not, I'd go to nursing school. Both were great careers. Bill called out whenever the workload was heavy, like with Sears catalogs. They were the worst. The postmaster would do things like remove all the toilet paper from the bathrooms, thinking we were wasting time pooping, I guess. He'd also turn up the heat in the summer so we'd be miserable and leave on our route faster, which was physically impossible because no matter how hot you got, you had to sort everything before leaving on your route. Sorting was by hand, and I was trying to be very accurate. Now Bill had gotten remarried shortly before I started with the post office. They never had a chance for a honeymoon, so they put it off. They scheduled a 2-week trip to the Caribbean. When he told me, there was a month to go before they left, which was plenty of notice. He told me the tickets were non-refundable, so don't screw me over. I had had enough of Bill and the PM screwing me over all the time, so 10 days before he left, I put in my 2-week notice. The PM assumed I'd work through Bill's vacation. Nope. Just the first 4 days. Bill called me at home. "Man, I've been good to you. You've got to cover my time off. The vacation is non-refundable." I remind him of all the times he's lied to force me to cover, and the days I had to work for him, like my anniversary, my birthday, my wife's birthday, etc. Also, how he screwed me over in orientation, making my first several weeks miserable. I left the day I said I would, the PM refused to cover, and Bill had to cancel the trip and come in and work. I loved nursing, so I made the best choice. The last one is titled, "Threaten Me and Abuse Me? I'll destroy the end of your life." When I was a young lass, I was sexually abused by an adult male who volunteered at the school I went to. It went on that entire year, and the next year I had the good fortune to change schools for totally unrelated reasons. Due to the standard issue threats and manipulation that come with these scenarios, "I'll kill your family if you ever tell them and take you to live with me once they're dead. What we do is a special secret that nobody else can ever know," etc. I never told anyone. I pushed it down and just tried not to think about it. Many years later, I had a friend confide in me that something similar had happened to her, and we swapped stories. She had done things the proper, tidy way, she told a trusted adult. The perpetrator was tried in a court of law, he was convicted, and he was jailed for a long time. Everything wrapped up nice and neat with a little bow on top. She was upset at me for not telling anyone about what had happened to me, even if it hadn't been until years later, because what if it had happened to someone else? But I pointed out that once it was past the statute of limitations, I couldn't really tell anyone. Doing so when he wasn't tried and convicted would come back on me as slander. So it felt like there wasn't anything I could do. For a while, I left it at that. But it started to nag at me. Was there really nothing I could do? I started by looking him up online. A basic Google and social media search were all I needed to find him, living far away from where I was, and I wasn't sure if that meant good or bad things for my revenge, whatever it turned out to be, as I had no definite plan then. On his very public profile, I got some news that rattled me. He had terminal cancer. It didn't seem like he was going to drop dead the next day, but still, it was now or never if I wanted to get some kind of closure from him. So I requested him on social media, and he accepted. I sent him the first message, "Hey, I'm Op from school. Do you remember me?" He answered yes, and that was it. I asked for his phone number. "I just want to talk to you." He said he didn't think that was a good idea. I said, "It's been so long, there's nothing that could happen. I'm not mad, just sad more than anything, and I just want to talk. Now that I'm older, I want to understand." He believed me, and I got his number. I tried calling him immediately, straight to voicemail. He said he would set up a time for us to talk. Okay, fine. I can be patient. It only gave me more time to think about what I would do. About a week or so later, I called him, and he picked up. I barely remember this conversation, and went through a lot of it on adrenaline, shaking like a leaf. He sounded sick. Old and sick. Not intimidating, like he used to be. Not scary, not anymore. He asked me what I wanted, and why I was talking to him after so long. I said, I just need to hear from you what you did to me so I know I'm not crazy. He said he couldn't do that. I told him he owed it to me, and that it had been so long ago, the statute of limitations was expired, so there was nothing that could be done about it. I said that I knew he was dying, and it would clear his conscience to talk about it and answer all of my questions, win-win, right? He still said no. So I told him that was a shame, and that I'd hope to get closure from him, but I guess asking his wife and son that I'd seen on social media would have to be enough. This was a bluff on my part. One knew that by telling him that, he could do preemptive damage control. If this didn't work, I'd be out of luck. He said fine. He first said in a very bland sort of way, I was inappropriate with you back then. Not good enough. I pushed and pushed and pushed until I almost thought he was going to hang up, and he finally admitted it, in detail. I thanked him and asked if his conscience felt better. He said yes. I said good, that was all I wanted for both of us. I hung up. Now the actual revenge part. I had recorded the whole thing. Not illegal, I was in a one-party consent area, and although he lived in a different area, he did too. I uploaded it to cloud storage and sent a link to his wife and his adult son. I explained that I had found them as a mutual contact on social media, and since he was nearing the end, I thought they might appreciate knowing some of the memories he shared with me about the time he volunteered at that school. I never got a reply from his wife. I didn't expect one, but still, I was a little disappointed. It took about 3 months, but then I finally got a message from his son. It was glorious. He wasn't the guy's son, he was his stepson, and he'd never liked the guy from day one. He'd told his mum this repeatedly, but she insisted he was just bitter about his bio dad leaving and told him to get over it. Something just felt off about him, and now he knew what it was. He apologized to me for how the guy had hurt me, not that it was any of his fault, they didn't even know him back then yet. He told me that he knew his mum hadn't replied to me, but she had listened to it. Afterward, she had left him. While he was dying of cancer. The stepson said this guy didn't have a family of his own, and that he and his mum and his own kids were all he had left. They severed ties with him. The best part, the wife never actually married him, and even if she had, when she left, it wasn't exactly like there was time for the guy to contest anything in court. He was fading fast, and that stuff can take a year or more to get settled. He didn't have that kind of time. When she left, she took all the money, it was all hers. He hadn't worked in a long time due to cancer, she took the closest thing he had to family, and the best part, without her, he no longer had the money to pay for his private health insurance. I thanked the stepson for contacting me and asked if he could do me one more favor, tell me when it was over and he was dead. He happily agreed. A few more months later, I got the news, he died alone in a state hospital. They weren't going to publish an obituary, although the stepson had decided to have him cremated so that he could just scatter the ashes. No plot, no lasting proof that this man ever existed. Apparently, he had spent the last few months writing constant letters to his now ex and stepson, calling them, texting them, everything. Neither one had responded, and he died alone, knowing that what he had done had eventually ruined his life and taken away what mattered to him. I thought it was a pretty fitting ending, although in the end vengeance just felt me. I always wish that I hadn't believed him back then and had just told someone. Thanks for listening.